So number 6, use your ears. This is one of my favorite tips because it's one that I've actually observed as being a problem here at our institution. Uh, Oftentimes, here's the thing, and I'm not going to stereotype students, but it's just what I've experienced. If a student has a conflict, right, let's say it's with someone in an office or whether it's in a classroom, it doesn't matter where, oftentimes they can get very, very emotional. And it's our role as administrators as well as faculty members and employees of no matter what you're charged to do here at the institution, to calm them down. One way that you can actively, really calm them down is that if you demonstrate that you are actively listening to them. I want you to remember, if you don't remember anything else from today, remember this, that if in fact a student believes that you are actually listening, actively listening, and considering their viewpoint, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. In fact, we often don't, right? That can happen. But if we're actually listening to them, it's really, really important. So here's the thing that we have to remember, that a student can say how they felt about something, and they could be completely wrong in terms of your intent. For example, if the student says, you were so rude to me, and the employee says, well, actually, I wasn't being rude. I was just telling you no. I was telling you that no, it's too late to apply for financial aid because you missed the deadline and you didn't turn in all the things. You're going to have to wait until next semester, right? And so, but what we need to sort of, peel the onion a little bit and say this: we cannot deny how the student felt. When you attack how someone's perception of events occurred, that can create a conflict. But what you can say is this: I'm sorry if you felt that way. That was not my intent to make you feel that I was being disrespectful or rude to you. I was really just trying to explain to you our policies and our procedures here at the institution. And I felt that when I was doing that, you got very emotional, which is, I can understand it because you were frustrated. But trust me when I tell you that was not my intent. My intent was simply to go over the policies. And I'm sorry that you felt that way, but I need you to clearly understand that really wasn't my intent. So here, what we've done in that example is to show the student, yes, you're hearing what they're saying. You did say, hey, look, I'm sorry if you felt that way. That was not my intent. Right? So you're doing both things. You're acknowledging how they felt, but you're also explaining to them that that was not your intent, right? Here's the wrong way of doing it. Stop lying. That is not what happened in the office. In fact, there were several coworkers around that could witness that I was not being rude to you. That doesn't acknowledge really anything. What that does is, what often happens is that people get on the defense. I often call it, put your paws down. Put your paws down. Just kind of try to take it in. Now let's look at our little employee here. Let's acknowledge it's difficult to hear someone say, hey, you did such and such. You were rude to me, or you were, you're not listening, or whatever it is. We tend to then put our two paws up, but it's just important. Just remember, stay professional. Make sure they know that you're hearing them, right? And just try to establish the respect on that level, right? Remember, we're not talking about agreement. We're simply talking about acknowledgement of someone's feelings through active listening. So I love tip number 6 because I've used it, it works, and it helps to really calm down and lessen conflict almost immediately. Let's look at 7 and 8, and we'll go through this quickly. Turn down the heat. If a conflict becomes too charged or emotional, it's useful to try to de-escalate techniques. Stick to I statements. I hear what you're saying. I'm trying my hardest to, we're gonna resolve this conflict with you. If their tone goes up, your tone should be down. It's a low tone. Reginald, I need you to understand me. We're going to resolve the conflict, but I need you to calm down. I need you to take a breath. I need you to sit here quietly, calm down, right? So you're giving these I statements, which really helps. Take a breather and leave the room. This is a really good strategy. Here's the thing that I always tell staff members and faculty: we do not expect you. You're in a situation that you feel is beyond your control. It's just blown up. You've tried the strategies. They didn't work. We don't expect you to tangle yourself in a major conflict. If you feel like your de-escalation techniques aren't working, go directly, send that individual to your supervisor. Tell them, I'm so sorry I haven't been able to help you. I can see that you're upset. Please go to my supervisor. I'm sure he or she can assist you better. That's it. And definitely don't carry on with when conflict is over the phone, right? So that's okay to do that, because that's a way of sort of separating yourself from the situation. Use open and positive body language and affirm that you hear what the other person is saying. We talked about that under step 6 or tip 6. It's so important. I hear you. I can see the frustration. Acknowledge how someone is feeling. If there is a student crying in front of you, you need to acknowledge that. You need to acknowledge, I'm so sorry you're upset. That was not my intent. I'm sorry, but let me explain our late policy and why I can't take this homework. And I can assure you that by you missing one homework assignment, Lynn, that doesn't mean you're going to fail the class, okay? So you're trying to sort of rationalize what's happening in the student's mind, but to simply ignore it, which I know we do not do, okay? But we just need to kind of talk about this. You need to acknowledge what's happening. If a student is escalating in behavior, acknowledge it. Try to use I statements to de-escalate it. If all else fails, mediation, and that's what we've already talked about. You can just simply go to your department chair and have individuals work to mediate. We have had much success with our mediation sessions. Oftentimes they can be uncomfortable because you have to sit there and listen to what the student has to say. It doesn't mean you have to agree, but one thing you do have to agree to, you have to agree to walk into mediation with the understanding that we will resolve the conflict. And like I said, we've had great success with mediation. Let's go down to 9. The best solution is prevention, okay? Here are some tips. I'm going to share some other thoughts, and I want the audience today to talk about some ideas here, because we are all experts really at this. We all have had experiences when we have prevented things. Establish clear expectations for conduct, the chain of authority, and job descriptions. This is talking about on the employee end. On the faculty end, make sure your expectations for your students are very, very, very clear. For example, what if you have an emergency? What are the expectations that your students need to be aware of? Are they supposed to check Blackboard? Are they supposed to, is that the way you're going to communicate? Hopefully you are, because that can create a lot of conflict if the communication channels are broken down, right? So the more you can explain your rules, and really try to get student buy-in. One of the recommendations I have, whether you're in an office or whether you are teaching in a classroom, is that if you have clear policies or rules, then they need to be clearly stated. And to me, it's not just acceptable to have them in the syllabus tucked away. Those more important rules should be discussed with students, and you need to explain why. Right? Why you have certain rules. You might be thinking, well, why do I need to explain it? It's just a rule. Well, you're trying to get buy-in and full understanding from your students, right? Here's an example. If the rule is, I do not accept late work. Okay, well, that sounds great. Explain why. Students hear it differently when you say, I do not accept late work because I'm not going to punish the students who have turned in their work on time. I feel that it's unfair for those students who may have stayed up all night to get the work done and submit it to me on time versus a student who didn't do that, right? And then you give some flexibility, except if you are ill and you're in the hospital, or maybe you've been called away. But having that rule is, reasonable, but you need to also remember to build in flexibility, but explaining things to students, it's extremely important. If you're working, let's say, in the admissions office, and there's certain rules, maybe there's a withdrawal registrar's office, maybe there's a rule about, the 60% rule, and if you withdraw too soon, how clearly are we communicating that to students? Yes, it's on the academic calendar, but do we have brochures out about it? Do we have flyers out about it? So these kinds of things, the more we communicate to our students what the impact of certain rules are on our students, the better. For example, look at incompletes. Do you have a procedure about incompletes? If not, look at that, because some students just think, oh, I'll just get an incomplete, until we tell them that's not how it works. So the big thing here that I want to stress is the importance of communicating with students. Oftentimes we get complaints about, let's say, a class is canceled. The student gets very frustrated because, again, they may have taken the bus, had a couple transfers to get to class. They may have been dropped off at school and they're not expected to get picked back up until another 4 or 5 hours. So they're kind of stuck here. These things create conflict and frustration. But they don't if you have certain rules like, students, before you come to my class, always check Blackboard. If I have an emergency, I will post it out on Blackboard. I will also put the assignment out there. So even if you come to campus, that'll be enough work for you to go in the library and you'll spend an hour to an hour and a half working on my assignments. That just helps to ease their frustrations. But I can tell you, it can create a lot of conflict when we don't know where the instructor is, there isn't anything on Blackboard, the supervisor hasn't been notified of the absence. Again, that doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, not only have you created conflict with the student to teacher, but now the student to the supervisor, right? So these are just some things that prevention is so important. So we're going to move to our sources, and you can just see, just to give them credit, thank you so much. This is a wonderful document. We are going to have handouts of this document if you haven't received them already. And thank you so much. We're going to move on to our next point.